listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today is the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, bud?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, man. We lost 3 or 4 to the Devils. How do you think I'm doing? So we
Jeez,
started
just pull. Wow, you took 2 seconds for me to pull up a new banner. Look at this. We're ready to go 3 straight to the Devils. How about it?
We start today right off the bat. We know what we're talking about. If you're listening to this podcast,
feel the excitement.
If you're listening to this podcast, you know how bad this team is. You were watching these games. If you're still listening to this podcast at the end of this season with the garbage team that this organization has put on the ice, then you watch these Devils games this week. So we really don't need to tell you about it, but we're here to break it down anyway. Did the Flyers win a period?
I wouldn't say break it
week?
down.
Did the Flyers win a period this week? Against the Devils, by the way.
Claude Giroux won an individual period.
Claude Giroux won the last 5 minutes of the third period.
22 seconds on Sunday. That was winning a period. Other than that, probably
Claude Giroux won a shift, and the Flyers got a win because of it, and that's about it. So we're sitting here, technically 8 days left in the regular season for the Philadelphia Flyers at this moment.
They can't come fast enough.
I've never in my life been this excited for a season to end.
Did you see the Bill Meltzer tweet from last night about how they're literally... Look, we all know that realistically, truth be told, as bad as this season has been, points-wise, it is not the worst season they've ever had, right? No, they had a stretch up until March where it's like, oh, yeah, they're a decent team. They're in the playoff picture, and then it all crumbles and falls apart, and they really turned into a bad team.
Bad. Not just a little disappointing.
But their points percentage is legitimately 500. Yep. So it doesn't qualify with the 06-07 season where you were the dead last team in the league.
Yeah, but I'd love to compare the record since March 1st. How's that points percentage going?
It's hard to compare records because of the number of games. That's also part of the problem.
Right.
But the goals against average as a team for both years is near identical, and this year's team has a shot to surpass that. Especially when you consider
on that team. Do you know?
In 06-07?
No, I can look it up real quick, but
no, I know how 06-07 ended. Or 07-08, 06-07, because 07-08 they ended up revitalizing themselves and they came back. They actually went to the conference finals that year, if you can believe it. The goalie at the end of the season was Marty Biron, because they made that deal, then signed him, and he was the goalie in the playoffs the next year. But at the beginning of the year, I'm not really entirely sure.
Okay, so your goalies on that team. Let's see if we can find.
Was Niittymaki a goalie?
Antero Niittymaki was on that team. Michael Layton was on that team. Martin Holt.
That's ironic as hell.
Robert Esch was on that team. And Martin Biron was on that team. Those were your 4 major goalies you used that year.
Okay, so basically it was the last chapter of Esch, because Esch was the goalie who helped you to a conference final within a game of the Stanley Cup final in 04.
It was when Robert Esch was kind of like
this. Niittymaki was this newcomer. Niittymaki had won a Calder Cup with the Phantoms the year before, the year of the lockout. So he was being regarded as this next guy coming in. He had played a little bit at the NHL level, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of those years, it might have been 06. 05, 06, the Flyers were an okay team. They made the playoffs. They didn't win the first round, but they were an okay team. Niittymaki, I think, he wasn't the goalie that year, I don't believe, in the playoffs, but he was in the Olympics for Finland.
Right.
And
I do
Finland
remember
that. I think. And they went all the way, everybody's focused on that team because everybody looks for the superstar power.
Right.
Was Peter Forsberg's on that team. And Sweden played Finland in the gold medal game that year. It was not a Canada-U.S. game. It was a really weird year for the hockey in the Olympics because of the fact that it was 2 teams like that. Not to say they don't produce a lot of great talent, especially when you have NHL players going.
But they're not your powerhouse. You don't expect that to be your gold medal game.
It's not. You don't expect exactly. You don't expect it to be the gold medal game because you expect
that to be the bronze medal game while Canada and the U.S. are playing for gold.
Or you sit there and you go, Canada and the U.S. are going to play one of them. If you had Sweden against Canada, you'd go, that makes sense. It's Canada and Sweden. Okay. You'd sit there and say Canada, Finland, U.S., Finland, whatever. It does but usually one of those 2 gigantic powerhouses is there. And when they both weren't,
almost always.
It's really shocking. So yeah, absolutely. I mean the game has
And
changed
I think
now
Niedermaki
because
got
until
a lot of credit for that run.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a reason to look at this and go, wow, what a year, like all that stuff. So he was getting attention, and then
it turned out he wasn't very good. Is it any wonder? You look at these 4 goalies, right? Robert Esch, Antero Niedermaki, Martin Biron, and Michael Leighton.
Now Michael Leighton's interesting because Michael Leighton, I guess, do you still have the roster up?
I believe so, yeah.
Because I assume you're looking at Hockey Reference, which makes it easy.
Yeah.
How old was Michael Leighton that year? Because that had to be early Michael Leighton. Like Michael Leighton was probably in his 20s.
Michael Leighton that year was where is he? 25. He was very young.
All right, so there you go. So 4 years later, when he's 28, 29 years old, and the third guy of choice or the second guy of choice to be helping a team on a Stanley Cup run, you know what I mean? Because it makes a lot of sense too. Because Michael Leighton had he's got AHL records and things like that for playoff games and things like that.
I believe he has the record for most saves in a game.
It feels like he's been around forever, right? It really feels like he's been around forever. But when you think about how in 2007 he's 25, it sets the stage for the fact that in 2018 he's still around because he's 37.
Right, you're expecting him at this point. If things work out well, he is now Brian Elliott, right? Ushering
just
in Carter
about,
Hart.
yeah. And then Biron was the trade acquisition that was made that basically was supposed to, and it actually turned out to work this way because that offseason was Biron came in and signed to be the goalie. So he came in, got a starting job.
From Buffalo,
all that
correct?
stuff. Yes, from Buffalo. And then that offseason, they go out and they get that offseason was huge for them, and it was before. It wasn't before salary cap per se, but it was with all of this. You had to be creative with how you went about doing things. So they went out and they got Jason Smith and Joffrey Lupul, I believe, both from Edmonton at the time. They got Kimmo Timonen and Scott Hartnell from Nashville in basically trade and sign. Because they traded for their rights and then signed them. They signed Danny Briere in the offseason, and next thing you know, you just added 6 new faces to a lineup that needed a complete new injection of players.
Well, that actually brings me really nicely to a little trivia question.
Oh, good. I love trivia.
That 06-07 team,
yes.
The leading scorer was Simon Gagne, 68 points in 76 games.
Okay.
Who was second?
Well, there's a couple guys who come to mind, so I'm trying to think about
Peter
this.
Forsberg was hurt the whole year. It wasn't him. 40 games, 40 goals.
Peter
40
Forsberg
points.
was also, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Peter Forsberg was traded at the end of that year, too. That was the year they got Ryan Parent and, a pick.
Yeah, well, he only played 40 games
Which I believe, if I'm not
per
mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, they then traded the pick they got in the Forsberg deal back to Nashville to get Timonen and Hartnell.
That's really funny.
Which, or at least it was part of the package that went back, so that this way they ended up with 2 guys who, from a franchise standpoint, are beloved. People love those 2 guys.
Scott Hartnell's on the TV broadcast half the time these days,
and does a decent job. I really like him as a
fine.
studio. I do. I don't love him in the booth as a desk guy on the pre and post and all that. I like him.
I think I agree with you.
I have one problem with him actually. I will address, and it's not to be like a downer on him. Like, I'm not saying he's not good at what he does and things like that.
Sure.
The thing I don't like, because I like him on NHL Network too. When he's done NHL Network, you open up the horizon, right? Like, you broaden your view, and you have to talk about so many different players, and it makes a lot of sense. When they put him on this Flyers broadcast, and maybe it's a sign of what the team still is, I really don't want to hear a guy on the broadcast, and obviously I do hear it when I'm watching the games from home, like doing the road games, because I don't hear anything that's going on during the home games.
Right.
And I'm not worried about it, but he still knows too many guys. Like,
I think that's fair. He's got too many buddies on the team,
and it's not a big deal to sit there and call Claude Giroux G in that sense, because he'll say his name and then he'll kind of abbreviate it from there. But
you can't call Jake Voracek Jakey.
Right, like I
that.
can't take that. I'm sorry.
do it.
It's like I don't, and I get it from the time like when you were in that locker room. That's exactly how things. Yeah, it's Jakey made a good play, and that's like no problems with that at all when you're the player. That's how it works. That's the hockey locker room camaraderie.
I like
But
Scott Hartnell a
can't
lot.
take it on the broadcasts right now.
I like Scott Hartnell a lot. I think you're right. I think he's probably better in the studio where producers can kind of keep a little bit of a tighter rein on him in that aspect. I think as the years pass and Jim Jackson needs a new color commentator, I think Scott Hartnell's a fantastic guy to fill into that role kind of as the next generation.
But I don't think they want to get rid of Keith Jones either.
I don't either.
I think
when Keith Jones is ready to move on, and I think Keith Jones is good enough to get a national job whenever he wants, if that role becomes empty, I don't mind Scott Hartnell jumping in there. I would prefer if that would happen after his previous teammates have moved on.
That's actually a very valid question too, because here's the thing. Keith Jones has been able to bounce back and forth for a good reason too. You're starting to get to where I'm going with this because it makes plenty of sense. It makes all the sense in the world to say you work for an NBC local. You do jump over to the national every so often, but at the end of the day, whether you're working the Flyers game on an NBC regional or you're working the NHL on NBC Sunday afternoon or Wednesday night hockey game, right? It doesn't make a difference. It's still on NBC.
Well, and it turns out that's not going to happen very much
longer.
So if
ESPN comes calling and says, we want to offer you a studio job.
And by the way, they have a bigger checkbook than NBC has.
Or even TNT. I mean, TNT is the same thing. That's a new. We didn't talk about that last week either.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't believe we've mentioned it since our last show, but TNT has come out and gotten the other half of the broadcasting rights, basically.
And I don't feel like they're not I have to go into deal with. It's the same. It's not the same structure, obviously. They're different deals, but like the point is that they'll get exclusive national games. They'll be hosting one conference final in the playoffs. They'll have the Stanley Cup final, three out of the
7 Stanley Cup finals, right?
Right, and ESPN has the other 4. That's fine. It doesn't make a difference to me. Bottom line being, look at this. You know, first of all, they did come out of left field. Let's be real.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean,
Turner's
nobody
never really shown
them.
an interest in hockey.
And not only that, but it was like I don't think you expected. Look, if CBS was the team, or like was the network, or Fox was the network, and you had to compete with something else that was a major, like with Fox, you're competing with baseball, you're competing with football. With CBS, it's almost the same thing. It's golf, it's football, it's NCAA tournament stuff.
Remember that time they put playoff games on the Golf Channel?
Because it's an NBC entity.
Yep,
yes, I know. Well, that's why that's actually why Turner makes a lot of sense, though, because Turner is
Absolutely.
TNT, TBS, True TV, and you've got multiple networks.
I can't wait to watch the Eastern Conference Finals on Turner Classic Movies.
It won't go that far, but
hey, listen, it would be really cool if they showed some retro games on Turner Classic Movies. Come on now. Show me some black and white Stanley Cup games.
You know what? That honestly would be interesting. Like, you could do that and tie it in a little bit.
I want two things. I want black and white playoff games from the 70s, 60s, 50s, whatever, 40s. And I want the documentary about the Flyers against the Soviet Red Army. I want both of those things on Turner Classic Movies.
If you want the black and white games, you're probably back in the 60s at that point, because even the Bobby Orr goal from the 1970 Cup final is in color.
Right.
And
was it in color video, or was that a picture?
No, there's video.
Oh, okay, you're right.
Because they've showed documentaries of it. They did like a Big Bad I think it was called Big Bad and Bobby or something like that, and that was the doc on it. But they've also, and like NHL Network does this, and that was another conversation that came up in like the media availability for that was what's going to happen with the NHL Network now, and like what direction
I have a feeling it's
going to
get folded into ESPN Plus.
I sure hope not, though, because it still has a purpose as a network channel. And
I'm not sure if you've used ESPN Plus.
I've used it on occasion.
Great.
It's very good. I still think I like the layout of it. I think it's easy to navigate. I'm not thrilled with the performance of it per se just yet. Like, I feel like they need to iron some stuff out with it. It's about equal to me. Like, I sit there and like, and look, that could be half be my signal as much as it is, you know. the actual app itself, but like it's depends on what it is. Like I've gone on an ESPN Plus or ESPN3, sometimes whatever they want to call it.
ESPNU.
No, ESPNU is actually a network channel.
Right.
So ESPN3 is like the another digital one or whatever, and they put games on or whatever. And
shows a lot of men's lacrosse.
And I've watched like college basketball games where it's two teams nobody's ever heard of, and just because it was on, I put it on. And the quality's good, and it feels like, as far as I'm concerned, it feels like I'm streaming ESPN for the day. Like that's all it is. And if that's the case, I can live with it. I tried to maybe this is what I mean then, and maybe this will change once they have full rights. I tried after they got the deal to watch one of the ESPN Plus games on ESPN Plus, and I ended up back on the NHL app because the quality on the NHL app is better right now. Like something's not right with this. So like they need to iron some stuff out with the NHL coverage maybe.
Yeah, if our listeners are unaware, I actually moved to Illinois a couple of months ago. I'm out in the Midwest. So I am no longer watching local games. Or at least I'm
somehow
no
or other
watching
you still
games.
ended up in a city that won't have playoff hockey this year.
Hey, listen, I'm an equal distance from St. Louis. I'm actually halfway between Chicago and St. Louis. But either way, so I've been watching games. All of them have been streaming. I have not had the opportunity to watch one on television, basically. When it's on ESPN Plus, I can also watch it via the NHL app because I have access to the center ice or whatever. I will always choose the ESPN broadcast.
So let me say something that's funny right now, too, by the way, to give people some context out there. Kyle texted me on Sunday to tell me that the final 4 minutes of the game where Claude Giroux ties it up, and honest to goodness, and I have no problem saying this right now, I would not be shocked if that's the final win of the season for the Flyers. It very well could be.
Me neither. No. I asked you this morning if they were openly tanking.
So it could be. So this could honestly be the crowning moment of the Flyers for the rest of the year, like the last great moment they have. And Kyle texted me to tell me that the last 5 minutes of the game was relegated to the phone for streaming because it was to the point where it was 3-1 against the Devils, a team that had lost 9 straight games coming in. Which, by the way, can I voice a displeasure that I have with stuff around the league?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Because this is twice now that it's happened. That it involves the Flyers, I should say, because the Flyers have helped a team snap an 18-game winless streak and a 10-game winless streak. I hate that. Their losses.
Yeah.
It's a losing streak. A team lost 18 games in a row, and then you lost to them, and a team lost 10 in a row, and you lost to them. And both times, by the way, the game that you won before that against both teams, they gave it away to you.
You tried really hard not to win it.
Yeah, they literally served it on a silver platter.
The Philadelphia Flyers desperately tried to lose that game last Sunday, and Claude Giroux did not let them.
Yeah, both of them. The Buffalo Sabres and the New Jersey Devils both said in the first games of those series, here, take it. Here's the win, free of charge.
In fact, take 3 of the next 4, please. We're begging you. And the Flyers went...
Wait, hold on. What was that sound? So when Gritty came out yesterday and they turned off the fake noise and said, let's make some real noise, and Gritty standing in front of a microphone with a whoopee cushion, squeezing a whoopee cushion into a microphone.
That's about the noise we needed.
I told you, go read Anthony Sanfilippo's story this morning, because if that didn't sum up the whole damn year, I don't know what does. I mean, honest to goodness, you could not make it up. And by the way, like he's so good, like he's so good when he writes stuff like this. He literally sits there and goes, the face of the franchise got up in front of a microphone and squeezed whoopee cushions, and he's not kidding, because like literally, let's put it this way, how many weeks ago was it? Like, it wasn't last Sunday. Like, it wasn't the game against the Devils, so it was a little while back. They had the Hockey Fights Cancer Night, and they ended up, I don't think they ended up not winning the game.
Obviously.
But Oscar Lindblom gets his lap and he skates around. Actually, you know what game that was? That was the 1-0 loss in overtime to the Islanders.
Okay.
So it was a close game the whole way through.
They actually didn't play terribly poorly.
Right, and it was actually unfortunate because it was like Brian Elliott gets on the hook for that game.
He shouldn't
because it goes off of Travis Sanheim's stick and into the net. Like, it's unfortunate. Yeah. Sanheim had also not played a poor game up to that point. Like, it happens. It's unfortunate that it was the only one. It is what it is, right? But the bottom line is like you have this moment, and they were trying to market this game. It's Hockey Fights Cancer Night, right?
Oscar
Come on
Lindblom's
out.
playing. Right.
Well, yeah, really? You wouldn't have known it because the advertisement had Gritty all over it. Like, Gritty's face is the one that shows up. Not, hey, here's the guy who beat cancer a year ago.
Less than a year ago. Yep. If we're waiting, if we're holding our breaths and waiting for the Philadelphia Flyers to start making good decisions, we won't have much of a podcast because both of us will just be holding our breath too long. Either way, we're coming down the stretch here. We are desperately limping to the finish line. We got some quotes from AV this week. And it sure seems from what he's talked about that he's not particularly interested in telling the truth right now, or at least the whole truth. I have a feeling
he's hinting at something though. That's the
right,
thing. Like,
and that's why
you
I'm
can
thinking
tell.
that
Like,
locker cleanout day could be fun.
I came away with whatever day it was that he said it. I guess it might have been Friday or Saturday. I can't remember which one it was. At this point it doesn't matter. They all
I
blend
believe
together.
it was Friday after Thursday's game.
But he said something that was cryptic and said something along the lines, like, to me, the takeaway I got from the way he said what he said was, I've got something to say, but now isn't the time for me to do it because there's still games left and I'm not trying to call people out.
And that translates directly to, I can't criticize my players during the season. Generally.
Pretty much.
Not can't, but he doesn't want to, and I respect that out of Alain Vigneault.
I think he doesn't want to because, quite frankly, if he said anything along the lines of calling somebody out, then the team that already looks like they just went through the motions of a game on
That's
Saturday
the kind of
night
move
like
that
they
loses
did.
you the room.
Well, if he hasn't already, quite honestly. Like, I mean, the key issue here when it comes to going into the offseason is going to be about you're going to have to make the decision of where the room is lost, per se. It really shouldn't be, for the fifth time in a decade, the head coach has lost the room again, and that's the change we have to make. I'm not trying to say, look, when I defend Alain Vigneault for this stuff, I'm not trying to say he's been perfect. He has not been perfect this year, by a long shot. Nobody has. There's a reason why you are, like honest to goodness, I believe, I'm pulling the standings up really quick.
Spoiler alert, the Flyers aren't in the playoffs.
Well, obviously, but, we can pop this
officially, by the way.
Yeah, we can pop this up. If you wanted to, like, here's the thing. And I don't think it's going to happen because I don't see the Devils doing this. But I just told you, I could see the Flyers losing out from here. 2 games against Pittsburgh, 2 games against Washington, which, by the way, by that point, should literally be using those 2 games. I don't know if is that the end of their year, by the way?
Devils next month. Oh, the Washington Capitals?
Yeah.
I believe that might be their finish, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, because I want to check, because if that's the last 2 games they have before the playoffs, let's say, right?
Nobody's playing.
No, it's not that. No, it's not that. Actually, people are playing because they just went a weekend. They just went a weekend without Ovechkin and Karlsson. You're using that as an extended preseason.
Nah, you might be right. That's fair.
Well, let's just say if a guy missed, and Ovechkin's missed like 4 games right now, you want him to get his legs back before the playoffs. Not that it's going to take a whole lot for him to do it, but
well, the Flyers are a pretty good team for him to do it against.
Well, not only that, he's scored in every game they've played against him.
That's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? Go out there and let him score a couple of goals, do his celebrations, and they do have one more the following Tuesday again. Well, not that one, but they do have one more after that. By the way, against Boston, I didn't realize that,
okay.
but that's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, too,
that's the game you rest them for, right? Because Boston's going to be hungry. Boston's going to be pushing, probably.
Actually,
maybe not.
Do you want to know what?
They might be playing for seeding at that point.
Right, I was gonna say maybe because they're 2 points. They're 2 points behind Pittsburgh in the standings with a game in hand.
Washington might not have the opportunity to take their foot off the pedal.
Nah, and guess when that game in hand is? It's that one.
Is that Boston game?
Pittsburgh doesn't
runs
play
out before that.
Pittsburgh's done on Saturday. So do you have one game left on your schedule if you're tied with them?
Or 1 point behind.
And you need a win to win the division?
Ovi's playing, Backstrom's playing, Karlsson's playing. They're all playing. This team is so depressing. It's really honestly hard to talk about the Flyers at this point. So how would you feel about wrapping this Flyers conversation up for now and regretfully talking about this team next week?
We can. There's a couple of news pieces I had that I have tabs for that I think we should get into because
let's hit those. I would love to talk about the rest of the league and fun
this
hockey.
This was the big one because this happened on Thursday, which is about when I thought it might happen if it was going to get to that point. And it's absolutely 1,000% the right thing to do. Like you just mentioned something about
And
anything the organization can do right. This is one thing
who might not
right.
see the banner. Carter Hart has been shut down for the year. He had missed several games before that. He was day-to-day for several days. They finally made the decision to shut him down. Something about a sprained MCL. Long term, he's going to be fine, but it makes no sense to play him this year.
I just wanted because I put the story out on Thursday morning when that news piece came out. And I write the story, and Pete Thompson from the station from 97.3 turns around and retweeted it and turns around and goes something about how this wasn't supposed to be some big serious thing, so now that's a little concerning. I don't buy that. I honestly think that realistically, he's healthy in a week. Like healthy enough in a week to play. Like, and honestly, if they were in the playoffs, he's playing right now.
Absolutely.
Or at the very least
played a week ago.
Or at the very least, trying to get back, or you're trying to limit his starts as much as you can.
Right, depending on how comfortable your playoff position is.
Right, like you're doing the best you can to make sure he's getting the conditioning. Maybe there's a few extra maintenance days in there. Maybe there's whatever, but you're doing everything you can. But he's not sitting out games. He's sitting out games because the season is over. Everybody knew the season was over, and there's no reason to put him in there anymore. And guess what? You know what else is the right move that I've seen a lot of people say? Because I get these comments on Twitter sometimes about it. His last game this year was a win. A shootout win where all eyes are on you in a shootout. He beats Pittsburgh, a team that very well could win the division this year. You ride off on that high note and go from there. He was starting to get some of the confidence back. I definitely will tell from, I forget what game it was. Probably Buffalo. It was a Buffalo game where he gave up a lot. They ended up winning the game, but he gave up a lot.
Right, I remember very down on.
He was very down on himself.
Right.
And at that moment, I don't know if we've ever seen his confidence as shaken as it was on that day. And I saw
that's probably the worst version of Carter Hart we've seen.
Right, but here's the thing: I saw even after games they would lose, like he would come in after losing a shootout game to the Islanders 3-2, and be much more upbeat about it, much more like on his own performance, which he had every reason to be, because they were certainly not clean games. He had to bail them out enough times to get it there. Like you saw saves against the Islanders in those games from him, where you went, that's the goalie from a year ago. That's the guy with a lot of confidence. That's who keeps you in a game. And he might be the only one in those games, so that's why they end up losing him in the end anyway. And yes, it's in a shootout where all eyes are on the goalie, but he'd come in with much more confidence in himself, a much more upbeat personality, and you go, okay, he sounds like the guy who also was, I don't want to call him happy-go-lucky, but the guy who always had this air of confidence about himself that was like, I know how good I can be, and I expect this of myself. Like, he looked like a month before that, not only do I have no confidence, but I don't even know how to fix this because I've never dealt with this before.
Right. We're just going to say it clearly here. Carter Hart has, by most statistics, regular and advanced, been one of the worst starting goaltenders in the NHL this year.
And he'll finish that way, but that's...
And he will, right. But I would like to personally... I think the Alain Vigneault, the benching, the get your head right benching that a lot of people criticized, a lot of people had a problem with, it worked. To whatever extent it worked. And he obviously didn't look amazing every single minute after he came back from that. But we started seeing those glimpses, right? Those glimpses that you just mentioned all came after that benching.
Well, and look, one of the other things to consider, and look, there was something wasn't right this year with everything, right? Yeah. Don't buy the line from Chuck Fletcher about how the coaching staff is completely safe. I think Alain Vigneault is safe, but don't buy that line. Like I've heard,
Perrier still has a job. Oh my God, he's going to, and I know he's going to. He can't be on the bench.
All right, he probably will though. What I've heard is, and look, granted, you get to a certain point where anything should make people a little bit happy. I've heard, don't be surprised if Mike Yeo is let go, and don't be surprised if Kim Dillabaugh is let go. Because first of all, from a goaltending standpoint, it feels like there is a disconnect there.
They need a goalie coach that's going to be able to work with Carter Hart.
So
not
don't
have
be
him
surprised.
With 77 or
don't be surprised
if.
Well, don't be surprised specifically because at the end of the day, the goals against number that they are going to hit, whatever it is, and however close it is to being the worst in the league, it probably is the worst in the league at this point. But whatever,
it's got to be close.
Whatever. Like
Flyers are last in the league in a lot of stats, by the way. I don't know if you've looked. It's ugly.
I know.
Yeah.
And so but whatever it is, as much as that is a team-wide thing, like we've already admitted, yeah, the goalies look bad, but the team doesn't play that much better in front of them, right? At the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's still kind of regarded as a goaltending stat as well, and there's something that's just not right here, So I think that there will be a different goalie coach here in a year. That I think is definitive.
What's Brian Boucher doing these days?
That would be insanely interesting. That's not the name I've heard, by the way. Like somebody in the press box mentioned another name. I don't want to say anything yet because I don't know, like off the top of my head. You don't know
what. I understand.
Well, not only that, but I want to make sure I have it right before I say it. Okay, yeah, no, this would make some sense. Okay, it is this. So the guy who I've heard is Ian Clark, he's a goaltending coach. He runs a goaltending school. I think Carter Hart actually attended the goaltending school at some point. He did used to be, by the way. He was the goalie coach for the Columbus Blue Jackets for a while.
Depends on when.
So hang on.
Was it during the Bobrovsky era?
So he was the Vancouver Canucks goaltending coach from 2002 to 2010, which would be kind of the Luongo years a little bit.
Luongo into Miller?
And I am trying to get you a year from that because the actual story I just clicked on was the press release from when he actually joined Columbus.
But either way, something has to change, and I believe the news story came out.
Actually, believe it or not, I think he is back with Vancouver right now, by the way.
Oh, is he? Well, Jacob Markstrom looks phenomenal. So he did. Markstrom looks phenomenal under him. Holtby now looks phenomenal under him.
Yeah, I was saying Markstrom looked phenomenal under him when he was still there, and they
Holtby
got
bounced back hard.
And look who he's working with now, though. He's working with Thatcher Demko.
Yep. Even Braden Holtby bounced back huge this year.
But basically,
you're absolutely expected.
But basically, you are absolutely correct. So get this. Okay, so here's a story that I'm reading. It's from a kind of Canucks blog, so to speak. It's kind of, whatever, but I'm sure it's one that writes with a lot of informed, stuff when it comes to talking about someone's history, at least, right? Right. Not necessarily opinions, but whatever.
Fan blogs always get their facts right.
No, but it says his work in turning Bobrovsky into a Vezina Trophy winner, so he did work over those years. Apparently, though, they said also in Columbus, he had input with the amateur scouting department and helped them identify both Korpisalo and Merzlikins.
Interesting. So the man knows a good goalie.
It doesn't mean he knows the rest of a team because Columbus is going to finish with one of the worst records in the league too, which is a whole nother story. Their
goaltending's been solid.
Their goaltending has been left out to dry a lot.
Their goaltending isn't the problem. Let's put it that way.
And nobody seems to acknowledge. I mean, let's put it this way. They also don't go, same thing. From one year to the next, they don't go from a team that took the Tampa Bay Lightning to 5 overtimes and had a goalie who made whatever number of saves. What was it, 84?
Yeah, but it's a little apples and oranges there, just with the turnover they had last offseason.
Oh, no, from a roster standpoint it is, but a goalie doesn't just go from, you can make 84 saves against the eventual Stanley Cup champion in a 5 overtime game
to a wet paper bag.
To nothing. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, you need to not have that play. And they've had injuries, too, by the way. Like, defensively, when you miss time with both Seth Jones and Zach Werenski for part of your year,
yeah, you're in trouble.
That's missing Ivan Provorov for a long term,
You had to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Patrick Laine came in and didn't get along with Torts so well, and then there's John Tortorella being John Tortorella all season, and Columbus has a lot going on.
Let's just say, it sure sounds like that relationship is going to end.
I'm glad we're not a Columbus Blue Jackets podcast.
I'm glad, okay, I want to be real with people for a minute here.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding about that. I know that there are people out there that would take this from one angle. If they were to come out and make a shocking move like Alain Vigneault is not coming back, do you really want to put yourself out there again in a year where who's a free agent? John Tortorella.
I would love the first 12 months of John Tortorella's tenure here.
Okay,
I would love it.
No, all right, here's the thing about that.
It would be the most fun 12 months in Philadelphia Flyers history. Including the 12 months where they won 2 Stanley Cups. This would be more fun than that.
All right, here's the thing. People would love John Tortorella for his absolute as forward honesty as you can get, right?
The man is honest.
Right. He's honest, and he says things to the media that people would want to hear in this city. That's going to get.
What did he say in Carolina or in Columbus about Artemi Panarin on the toilet before the game? He had diarrhea before the game.
Yeah, I know.
45 minutes before a playoff game. Amazing.
No, it wasn't a playoff game. It was at a deadline.
Oh, you're right.
Everybody was asking, is he going to get traded?
Why wasn't he in practice?
Why didn't he play? He didn't play. Does that mean he's getting traded? No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding you. He was sick. There you go. And he just said it. But he had things to like. It's like the way he handled the Dubois situation, like in talking about a player and not being afraid to say things. But that's like, here's the other thing about it, okay? And I just saw it float by on Twitter, so I'll mention it. The Flyers are the first team in any major sports league in 10 years to go back and forth with this playoffs, non-playoffs thing. They're the only team in all four major sports that over the course of a decade was in, then out, then in, then out, then in, then out. Right?
Right.
If you would like that to continue, then go ahead and bring John Tortorella in if you decide Alain Vigneault's not your guy. Because John Tortorella, with the way that he does it, do you think for a second, like, John Tortorella is the coach for all of the people out there that don't like Claude Giroux?
Do you know why I think John Tortorella would maybe be good for this organization? I'm not advocating for it. I'm not calling for it.
Because that's the grenade in the locker room?
A positive thing that would come out of this, we would know very quickly what the problem is. Because if the problem is the players, then that's kind of the conclusion that we're starting to come to, right? We've replaced everybody else. We've talked about this a bunch on the show. If the problem is in the room, if the problem is among the leadership group, if the problem is somebody, John Tortorella is the guy to rip the covers off and expose the story, right? He has no problem benching Patrick Laine right after you traded for him. He has no problem calling people out when the effort's not there, John Tortorella would never say what Alain Vigneault said and say, oh, I have things, we're not going to talk about it now. We'll talk about it at the end of the season, blah, blah, blah. That's not really John Tortorella's style. John Tortorella is more likely to fire from the hip and just let go. Whatever he has to say at the end of the year, he'll just say it now. And it might not be the best for the franchise long term if he stays your coach. But if he's your coach for 12 months and exposes all of the flaws in your organization, you can fire him, hire a real coach, and fix them. The
problem with that though is that you don't have time anymore.
I know.
You're flat out of time. Not only that, but to me, you've already answered that question. You hired a Hall of Fame head coach and two assistants who have coached in the NHL as well, that all three combined have like 1,200 wins in the NHL. It's not like they don't know what to do with good players. If you don't have the players and you don't want to show up and go to work, then you're not going to be here. And that was what was like. Shane Gostisbehere came out the other day and flat out said, we know what's coming at this point. We're not stupid. There's going to be changes made. And Travis Konechny said if people aren't coming out with not an energy, but if they're not coming out willing to show up and play, they probably shouldn't be here, even if the season's over. And yet the funny part was that I watched a game where it looked like most of the guys who were out there didn't look like they wanted to be there. And the reason that this is like, it's really, really important at this point, and this is why you can't sit there and keep doing the coach thing. If you want to change some of the coaching staff around, go ahead. I'm not like,
and they're going to.
Like, there are assistants who may be wrong. That's fine. But at this point in time, I'm going to tell you right now, the team got eliminated on Thursday. And after the team got eliminated on Thursday, they had a home game on a Saturday night against the New Jersey Devils, who are also not making the playoffs, and there maybe was 1,000 people in the building.
And that's probably about 900 too many.
But that's not even the point. Wake up as an organization and realize that nobody cares about you. They're done with you at this point. Like, nobody cares. So wake up and realize, like, this offseason, you better be putting together a team that knows how to win hockey games and play the game the right way. Because if you don't, you're going to lose me. And that's why I said you don't have 12 months with another coach to sit here and go, gee, I don't care how extreme the coach is and we could just fire him after a year if it really doesn't work because we'll know all the flaws. You got to know the flaws right now. And the flaws are you've got a team that is sitting here going through the motions with 5 games left in the season that is ready for this year to end as much as the fans are. And here's how this is going to work. You're going to have the diehards because right now you went from a year ago being a team that was getting the attention of the city again. That was the biggest takeaway from the whole year. Yeah, they didn't win the cup last year. They didn't make a conference final.
The city took notice.
It didn't matter. The bottom line was that for a month and a half, do you know what happened last summer? You were one of the first teams to come back and return to play. You were back before, or I won't say before, but you were back around the same time that baseball got started, and baseball wasn't good in the city either. There was no football yet, and basketball came back for the playoffs. You know what you got when everything came back like that, though? The basketball team in the city almost looked like their heart wasn't in it for what they had to go through to even get back to playing, and they were missing guys, and they weren't good enough without those guys. So they come back, they play, and they get swept right out of the playoffs. It's over before it starts, right? It's over before it starts. So for a month, you're the only thing in the city.
You're the only show in town.
You're the only show, and not only that, but at the same time that the basketball team is bowing out in their playoff run, you're winning so-called playoff games to take the top seed, then get into a playoff series where you finally win. And it wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, but the storyline of the playoff series was the one thing that's plagued you the entire time since 1985, right? The goalie was here. The goalie won 2 shutouts in a row to put you on the brink of a playoff series win. And for the first time in 20 years, you had a guy that could steal games. And you knew it. And you're going, that means that if that's the case, if you have a goalie like that, why do you think that Columbus was the way they were a year ago? Because no matter how they spun it, Sergei Bobrovsky's in goal, we have a shot. It doesn't matter what the rest of the lineup is. We have a shot.
You can take way more risks on the ice when you know your goalie's making every stop behind you.
Or for the most part, sure. But the bottom line being,
it frees you up. You play looser.
But you had the biggest piece of building it. You build from the net out. So if you have the biggest piece, sure, all right, fine. You don't have a goal scorer yet. But that's the luxury at the end of that's the icing on the top of the cake. You got to make the cake first, right? You got to have that base layer that says it's going to all stay together when I do put the icing on the cake. That's the goalie, so you needed that. So you thought you had that. And that's why you won that playoff series. And then you had moments, right? Like, even though the Islanders were the better team in that playoff series, you went, Phil Myers scores in Game 2 in overtime. That's a big fired-up moment. You're down 3-1. You get mildly excited about the fact that Scott Lawton scores in overtime of Game 5 to get you one more day, but then you're locked into double overtime at Game 6, and you know what a Game 6 is. Whether you think you're not the better team in the series or not, you win, and you're one game away from it one way or the other.
And that's
Ivan Provorov scores...
Was Game 5 the Oscar Lindblom return game?
No, Game 6
was the Oscar Lindblom return game. The double overtime game.
And it was the return, but he was barely on the ice for those stages because you needed
the emotional charge was there.
Oh, the emotional charge was there, but Ivan Provorov scores that goal, and in that moment, right there, you're thinking no matter what,
I'm thinking
anything's
parade.
Possible.
I'm thinking parade in that moment.
You're sort of thinking that. I wasn't going that far with it, but like you're sitting here going, Game 7, now they've got a shot to win. You know why? Because it's one game. It's just one game. If they're out of gas, they're out of gas. If they don't win it, and I was at that point, I go, if they don't win it, man, they showed some fight. Because the series could have been over 3 days ago.
Absolutely.
They showed some fight. They didn't quit. And this year, you're feeling the exact opposite way you felt from that Game 6 goal. Because
this
you're
team
sitting
quits
there
every
feeling,
game.
Because you're feeling like you're feeling like it. Honestly, that's the way it feels. And
they quit every game. Half the time, it's in the first period. If they give up the first goal, I've mentioned it on the show before. If they give up 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, I'm done. I am turning the game off and watching fights or playing Warzone or playing NHL 21 or doing literally anything else with my time, because I know if I spend the first half hour watching this game and they play like they play and give up 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, I'm not going to waste the next 2 hours of my life.
And here's the thing.
And I've never been that way before.
To go backwards, and like we brought up 06-07 before already. Here's the difference between it, because that's obviously now that's a long time ago, right? It's over 15 years ago.
Right. Oh God, why did you say that?
Well, just hear me out.
Why would you say that to me?
I'm just trying to, I know, but
that's awful.
Do you think it makes me feel any better?
No.
That, like, over the course of the last decade, I didn't think it could get any worse, truthfully. And I can even sum the last decade down to the last 7 years. I've been going down to games, covering the team, all that stuff. I really didn't think it could get any worse than the 2 months that was 2 years, like 2 seasons ago. The 2-month period where it was, I'm watching this team lose games by multiple goals constantly. They fall behind so early in games all the time. and you knew something big was coming. And the big thing that came first wasn't what you thought. So the GM is gone, the coach is gone, the new goalie is coming up, and all of this stuff is happening all at once. And you knew from that point on that realistically, playoffs shouldn't be expected. They made a little bit of a run. They got on a winning streak. Carter Hart was really good. They found the GM that they wanted to try to do this and put this together going forward. They needed to find a coach. Is what it is. Bottom line was that if they didn't make the playoffs, you knew why. You decided that
they weren't necessarily a great team.
But you decided that at the end of November when Thanksgiving weekend rolled around and it was GM's gone, the coach was on thin ice at that point, and 3 weeks later that happened too. You already admitted it, right then and there. But it was the fact that by the end of the year, the number of times they fell behind in a game 2-0, I believe in an 82-game season, was 32. And you're going, how can it get much worse than that? How can it get much worse than falling behind 2-0 32 times in a year?
Well, they're going to do it 32 times in a 56-game season. How about that?
Not 2-0, but giving up the first but giving up the first goal in a game, what probably will equate to something close to that. And over the last, I forget what the number was. Jordan Hall tweeted it. It was like out of the last 30, 24 of the last 33
10
games.
of 11 or whatever.
It's 24 of the last 33, I think, since which is absurd.
I think at one point I saw 7 of 10 or something like that. It's insane.
I mean, it happened every single time in this 4-game series, I believe.
Yeah.
The Flyers never scored first. No.
And Saturday night, even when they scored first, or even when they scored, they didn't actually score. And
it wasn't even
Joel
the first
Farabee
goal.
ends up picking up a junk time goal, right?
And here's the thing, okay? Truthfully, I want to pull the silver lining out of Farabee's goal, and like realistically, it's a great shot. It's the shot we saw in the beginning of the year. It's from the guy who probably showed the most promise moving forward, the biggest building year he can have. The guy, if
there's a lot of negatives this season,
if
Joel
there's a guy who's
positive.
got to bottle this year up and go take that and run with it further, it's Joel Farabee.
Yep.
Everybody else, just about everybody else on the team, regressed in some way, or at least regressed or hit the mean for what they should have been. Like at the end of the day, here's the thing:
James Van Riemsdyk probably also exceeded expectations for the season. But I would be willing to venture that across the rest of the lineup, that's literally it.
And I almost can't fault James Van Riemsdyk for hitting a goal-scoring slump at the same time the team looks like they've kind of quit.
No, I'm not blaming him for that at all. But I just mean in terms, James Van Riemsdyk did a lot this season in terms of repairing his value, and him and Joel Farabee are probably the only two.
Well, then
whose
it's probably
value
going to
went up this year at all.
Well, then if that's what gets that contract off the books, then I guess you take it.
I have a feeling it might. It might cost. It's
I
really
really
cost the
don't
Flyers.
know. I really don't know. I mean, geez.
Well, here's the thing.
They've got so much work to do this offseason. It's not even funny. We'll talk about it next week, I'm sure.
Yeah, we are guaranteed some amount of change. We've talked about Seattle before. We've talked about blah blah blah. But really, as far as this Flyers team goes, the season's over, and we've known that for a while.
I guess real quickly, the only other Flyers point we can make, because this also happened, was Claude Giroux when he did have those 2 goals at the end of the Devils game, and he hasn't had a point since, I don't believe, but or maybe no, I'm sorry, he did score 1 goal. He scored to tie the game against the Devils on Tuesday,
right?
Very briefly,
right?
But
very, very briefly.
But he's up over 850. He moves to third all time. And I know people take the era of the team and use it to define him, and it's not completely unwarranted, but he's a really good player.
Yeah.
And I know I know that people don't want to admit that when the season goes the way it is, when he's always the guy who's the captain, so you expect something like Giroux doesn't say.
We've talked about this before.
But Claude Giroux doesn't. You go ahead.
Claude Giroux is a good player. He's a good leader. If he is your best player, that's kind of where you're at. And for a long time, for basically the entire decade of the 2010s, he was their best player.
Yes and no, though, because when they made the playoffs, I guess it would be now 4 seasons ago, because they made, then missed, then made, then missed.
We're talking about the Washington series or the
Pittsburgh series.
Okay.
The year when he should have won the Hart.
Yeah.
That year when he's 29 and probably your best player that year, he should be your best player. He's 29 years old. Yeah. You're just bringing these, that would have been Travis Konechny's second year. I guess, because the first year they missed the playoffs too, I think.
Yeah, that was his first taste of the playoffs was that year.
Right, so it was second year, right, and it was the second year of their careers.
Right.
Because that was the year Ivan Provorov wore his heart on his frickin' sleeve and cried in the locker room because they didn't win a game.
Played with one arm in Game 6,
which was really funny about it because he got asked the other day about his kind of Iron Man streak, if you will, because he hasn't missed a regular season game or any game really. He hasn't missed a game. Period.
It's absolutely an Iron Man streak.
And he kind of laughed it off for a second, or whatever. Not that the Iron Man streak is something to laugh off. He's laughing it off has there ever been an injury? First thing that popped into my mind was has there ever been an injury that kept you close to not playing? And I'm going,
there was that time your arm was hanging off.
How about the time you didn't have your shoulder wasn't attached?
Right, your arm was hanging off your body.
Cut me a break. That was.
And you were still diving in front of shots, blocking shots. Jesus, the man's a monster.
I mean it wasn't a hit. He stumbled into the boards, but when he stumbles into the boards in Game 5 like that. And the impact that it makes,
I was there.
It still makes you cringe when you hear the sound.
I was there. I was actually in the front row, and it was at the other end of the ice, but I heard it.
You just see it because he goes right in with it too. He leads right in with his shoulder.
I definitely didn't think he was playing Game 6. I didn't think Sean Couturier was playing Game 6 in that series either because he was also playing on one leg. Because of Radko Gudas, but whatever.
Sean Couturier showed you everything in that series, too.
Sean Couturier, I said on this show after that series that Sean Couturier was going to wear an A at some point. Because you just saw it in that.
And I said lo and behold, here we are.
And I said the same thing in that same show about Ivan Provorov, too. And guess what he's doing this year? I've seen him with the A on a couple of times.
Because you do know leadership when you see it. And that doesn't mean, like I said, that doesn't mean Claude Giroux is not a good leader.
Right.
He is a good leader. He's not the leader that most people want because they don't have the success as a team. And there's a difference between it now and then, too. I think people look back in hindsight and go, 2016, 2018, the years in between, you're playing with average guys.
The supporting casts were bad.
Right, so he's got to be the do-it-all guy. And I'm sorry, you're not the Boston Bruins. You're not Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, and Brad Marchand. You're not the Colorado Avalanche with Nathan MacKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, and Mikko Rantanen. You're not that kind of line. So I don't care if you put it's Sean Couturier, Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek. I don't care. They're not that quality. They're not those take-over-the-game players.
Right, none of those players
Claude Giroux's never
the game.
I don't want to say Claude Giroux's never been that guy because in 2012 he certainly was to that extent. And granted, you're playing with a Hall of Famer in Jaromir Jagr and a guy who was really elevated by both of you in Scott Hartnell.
Absolutely. That line was insane.
It was an excellent line. But the bottom line is that he would go out there and show you what he could do. And it's not that that's gotten stale over time. It's not that that's done anything. It's just the supporting casts from that year on got worse for a while. They were kind of not sure where they were as a franchise. Are they building? Are they retooling? Are they what are they? And now you're at a crossroads now where his final years of his career, he's got 1 year left on a contract, and then he's got to sign. And he's going to have to ask a very important question, and it's going to be determined by two things. Yes, by this point, he'll have 2 kids. He's got one. His wife is pregnant. She'll have another one by the time the next season begins. They'll have 2 kids by that point. You've got to ask yourself, is staying in Philadelphia about the family and saying, I've got 2 kids here, my wife is here, I have a life here, I'm expected to be I want to be part of this team forever because this is what I know. This is how I've built my life. And there's nothing wrong with that answer. But if you want to be and knowing the competitor that Claude Giroux is, if you want to win,
the man wants a ring.
If you want to win, do you want to have
do you want to trust this organization to get it to you?
No, that's not what I was going to get at. Do you want 4 shots at it or do you want 2 or 1? Okay. Do you want to be the guy that down the road they come to you and say, it's February, it's a year where we're not going places.
We're 8 points out of a playoff race. Do you want to go to a winner?
Right. But in a deadline deal, you have to acclimate yourself to a new environment, and in 3 months, be ready to go. 2 to 3 months, be ready to go, learn a new system, join a team that's successful, and then again, you're one of 16.
Right. At that point, and
do you want
the pressure's not on you to be the leader because you're just
no. I'm saying, but you're one of 16 teams. Do you want one shot at it, or do you want maybe 4 with a team that you know is going to make the playoffs for 4 years running?
Right.
Like that's the thing. Like Claude Giroux at 34 years old is going to get a 3 or 4 year contract.
Probably, yeah.
Because someone's going to latch themselves to him for long term. It's probably going to be the Flyers.
Let's just say somebody, Montreal, just throwing a name out there. Montreal offers him 4 years, 6 par.
Okay.
Can the Philadelphia Flyers beat that deal?
Not at 6 par.
Claude Giroux is not going to be a Philadelphia Flyer.
All right. Well, then, no. All right. Let me re-answer that question. Can they beat it? Yes.
Should they beat it?
No.
Okay. Right.
I
agree. And I agree with that.
My answer to what contract Claude Giroux should have after next year is he needs a 3-year bridge style deal with Sean Couturier's pay.
Essentially, yeah.
Like the two need to almost switch places. Sean Couturier needs to be making $7 million, $8 million, whatever it is.
And he will be.
And he probably will be because, unfortunately, look, I haven't loved his season either. He missed time. He probably is still hurting. He tried to come back to be part of their playoff push. It probably didn't work, obviously that didn't work, right? Right. They didn't make the playoffs, so he didn't come back and help their playoff push. But he tried. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't make him a good player. I think he's playing hurt. When the year ends and they come out and let's this way, I think that's half of Alain Vigneault's cryptic answer. He's not going to sit there and tell you. He already did tell you though. They sat Kevin Hayes for a game, and he said, "Yeah, he's not 100%, but that's not why I'm sitting him."
Right.
Kevin
Hayes has not had a fantastic.
Which by the way is telling in so many ways because first of all, it means we're going to hear about a lot of I feel like we're going to hear about a lot of surgeries.
For sure. 100%.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, we're going to hear a lot about guys who went through COVID and had trouble getting their legs back and their energy back and all that stuff.
And I think that's where we're going to hear a lot of names.
And then number 3, though, is you just already admitted number 3, AV. Number 3 is guys aren't giving you enough.
Yep.
And it was an underachieving kind of year, and it was not the year that you had. And bottom line is that throughout this process, throughout this last year, you went from having a team that we all knew it, we all could see it. It was so evident that it was really evident for Giroux and Voracek, 2 guys like that. It was so evident. Hockey was fun again here. And you saw not only guys who were new creating a fun environment, and I say new in every sense of the word. I'm not talking about just not just Kevin Hayes, not just Matt Niskanen, not just Justin Braun, but Joel Farabee and Oscar Lindblom. And Lindblom wasn't even on the team technically. He was just, he was going through his treatments. Phil Myers, Travis Sanheim, all those types of guys. Nick Aube-Kubel. These were guys who were literally injecting something into the team that the team had not had for the last decade.
Yeah, last year's team was
fun. And not only that, but Kevin Hayes was the ringleader. He was literally the ringleader of the circus.
They kept putting out mic'd up videos last year. Right. Every couple of weeks they would mic somebody up. They mic'd Kevin Hayes up 5 or 6 times.
And I say circus in a good way. Not circus as in it's a joke. I'm saying circus in the sense that here's the guy who's... This is literally... that was literally the class clown. Here's the guy who gets up and makes everybody else laugh, and it may drive somebody crazy. And I'm not in this case, it wasn't the coaching staff or management. It's driving maybe the opponent crazy. But you had guys. What was the one with the wasn't it with the Rangers? Brendan Lemieux, maybe it was in one of those February games. They come over. There's something going on near the bench, and you got Scott Lawton and Travis Konechny getting right in his face from the bench and laughing at him. Whoa, where was that for the last 10 years? That's what made it fun. And now that's gone.
The Travis Konechny buckface photo where he's making fun of somebody's teeth as he's rolling by. Come on. There's some really good moments from last year's team. They were a lot of fun.
It was not fun. And it went from being that. Not only was it fun, you could see the players having fun, but you saw the fans come back as a part of it. The fans were sitting here going, "This is actually a ticket we want to get." Yeah. We want to come see this fun team who looks like they can beat anybody, and we want to go and be a part of it. This year, you've got a group where, first of all, I have to check and Giroux said that their home record's not as good as it was a year ago, and obviously he's absolutely right. I mean, it doesn't take much notice that. But I'd love to see what it really is, because it takes the whole Carter Hart can't win on the road thing and takes the whole home ice mattered so much thing and throws it right out the window.
Well, one thing that I think we're kind of overlooking here. Who are the guys that we just mentioned? We talked about the personality guys. We talked about Kevin Hayes, and we talked about Nico Kubel. Guys who may not be the most skilled on the ice, but kind of make up for it with energy and personality and et cetera, et cetera.
But Hayes was one of the most skilled on the ice as much as he was, a personality. But
I think Kevin Hayes thrives off of being that clown, being that goofball. When he's given that opportunity, he tends to run with it. And I wonder, not making an excuse, I wonder how much of this year is affected not just by COVID in the fact that they got sick and were worse physically for it,
but because they can't hang out.
The camaraderie, right? The team dinners, the hanging out, the golf games. I wonder how much of that funness comes back next year.
Well, listen, I do like that. I think is that's where the COVID excuse makes some sense to me, because yes, you're limited in what you can do to
build team chemistry.
No, it's not just that either, because it goes back to the Robin Lehner thing from like a week ago, which is the idea that, like, based on what Robin Lehner said, and I don't know the validity of this, but like, let's take this for what it is. It sounds like they can't even so much as say, I'll go to the grocery store.
No.
You know what I mean? I don't know how I exactly would be doing if I had to sit there and say, you know what? I go down and I maybe am allowed to cover a game, but since I cover a game, the protocol for even the media members is don't help your family. My wife has to go out and go to do grocery shopping by herself. Yep. I'm not allowed to go to a grocery store. I'm not allowed to go to a department store and get like clothes that I might need for something. I'm not allowed to go to a friend's house. That even after we've been vaccinated, the season's still going on. I'm not allowed to go.
Well, and that was Robin Lehner's biggest problem with it.
Right. And now granted, I think it was in Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts that he said something about how, based on every feeler he's put out, somebody led Robin Lehner down the wrong path because there was never that discussion. And that may very well be the case. But
I think Robin Lehner has come out and even said that he looked at the NBA protocols, and the NBA protocols are things about when people are vaccinated and when certain percentages of the organization are vaccinated, you can open your practice facility.
I think it also is like when a team hits a certain percentage, you're allowed to go back to having in-person video sessions.
Yes.
Which makes a difference too.
Including like practice with no masks and like everything. Like,
right. Now,
you don't have to have masks in your team facility.
Now look, let me relate it to something for a minute that might be in more of the average person's life for a minute. If you have to do video sessions through Zoom,
it's a nightmare.
No, but
it sounds like a nightmare.
Well, like let's be real about something for a minute. Ever do online classes in college?
Yeah, they were a nightmare. That's why I stopped doing them.
Well,
I ended up having to drop the class because it was that poor and never touched online again.
Well, there's a lot of factors that can go on.
Yeah, that's just how I learned. But either way.
But and here's the thing: like I never did in college. But if somebody would told me that like I was going through my college years now instead of then, I actually did something for my alma mater where I hopped on with a couple of seniors and like did like a mentoring thing and things like that. And I even said, I can't imagine what you guys are going through, because so much of what we did when I was in school was you went and did stuff. You didn't
practical stuff.
Right. You didn't just sit there and like perfect, because that like the classes were even called practicums. Like, right. And I know that's a Latin thing and all that, but like the point of that being, you go and do the thing you're supposed to be doing down. Like we didn't go and do radio to sit there and say we're going to sit and read a book about radio. No, we went into a radio station and pushed the buttons and actually ran the board and played the songs or broadcast a game or did whatever. We had to go and do it. Like the only way to get back, and I've said it multiple times when I talk about people who want to do broadcasting. I don't broadcast like I used to. I mean, like I do this, but I don't call games. But when I would call games, I would tell anybody who is new, I go, really honestly, the best advice I can give you is you're only going to get better if you keep doing it. So if you think it sounds awful the first time, the only way you're going to get better is if you go and do a second game. There's no way for you to get better by sitting here going, I'm not that good. I feel like how am I supposed to practice?
Oh, trust me. If we have any OG listeners to this podcast, I was rough when we first started, and I've even gotten better.
And the only reason
15 episodes.
And the only reason I've sounded good from day one on this podcast is because
I had training to begin with.
Well, right. I did radio in college for 3.5 years. Like literally after for my college, when we arrived at college, they gave you your classes for the first semester you were there, which was all the core stuff that you had to do.
All your prereqs.
And And you still were doing core in the early years, but your second semester of your first year, you were allowed to start diving into stuff related to your major.
Broadcast.
And I couldn't do newspaper because of the fact that it was a year-long thing. So you had to start at the beginning of a year. So fine, I jumped in and I hit the first thing that I saw that was a half year, and you got started. And I still swear by this. I took the radio class, and they did an experimental thing that year with that particular class that I don't know if they do still, where they said, oh, you know what? We're going to try something. Instead of just making the class be the class, we're adding an element to it where the people in that class are getting 1 hour on the air. Like, they can get an hour show, too.
That's cool.
And the fact that I got to go behind a microphone and do a show for an hour and start working on it then, game changer. I wanted to do it for I literally never left doing radio for the rest of my time at college. I want to do it. I still miss it.
One of these days you'll be hosting right alongside Hunter Brody somewhere.
Oh, I don't know about that. Like, first of all, the problem is that I've always done this to an extent. I've carved I become a niche writer where I pick
How did we get here?
We were talking about video through doing video sessions through Zoom.
Right. Okay.
Because what I'm trying to say is that if you were a college student at that age, and it relates because of the fact that take a guy like Joel Farabee, take a guy like Nolan Patrick, they're college age kids.
Yeah, they're kids.
So if you're a college student, if you're a senior in college, and your entire structure revolves around you're on Zoom for class, how much you paying attention sometimes?
Sucks. It's gotta suck.
You know what I mean? Or how easy is it to be distracted and not get away with it, right? And that's not me. I'm not calling out individual players and saying I know how they act during a Zoom call.
No,
I'm just saying
it's super easy to have your phone right here.
It's super easy to do something that's distracting. Correct. That's the point. And it's not the same thing. It's another part of what they do with video sessions is they in person is they call them in. They say, well, let's watch this video, and now we're going to go on the ice and work on it in practice. 3 hours later, you started at 9 a.m. The practice is at 12. You watch video for an hour, and you go on the ice and you do it.
Right.
It's not the same thing. So yes, in those cases, I say you can chalk it up to COVID a little bit and say it's not the same. And that's why I said last week, I think when we did the show, Travis Konechny is one of the guys that I sit there and I go, look, if you come to a crossroads with him and you say something's got to be shaken up in a big way, he gets traded, I understand why you're doing it. If that's what you think, if Travis Konechny nets you the top pair defenseman that you need, and that's what it took, and you kind of came to a point where you went, you know what, it's hard to part ways with him, but I'm going to do it because we need to make changes. And you're not making changes at that point for the sake of making changes, but you're going, we're getting something of great need. And yeah, it sucks to part ways with a guy who averaged 24 goals over the previous 3 seasons.
Right.
But we'll do it because we have to. We need that other piece so badly. I'd rather go and I'd rather sit there and go, you know what? Travis Konechny was a nice player for all those years, and yes, it's tough to part ways with him, but Tyson Forrester's coming. And we drafted him, and Chuck Fletcher didn't draft Travis Konechny, so you go, I drafted this kid. I like this kid. He's coming soon. I'll part ways with him. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
That's the kind of thing that definitely could happen this summer.
But you need if that's what it comes to, you sit there and you go, that's tough, but I'm getting what I need back. And you don't hold this attachment. And it doesn't mean you want to part ways with him, but it means you're willing to do what you have to do to make it happen. You know what I mean?
That also depends on the Philadelphia Flyers trading away somebody that they drafted. God forbid. Mm. The only person we've ever traded away that we drafted was Sergei Bobrovsky. How'd that work out?
You only traded away a player at the most critical position in the game for all those years, you know what I mean?
Because you signed Ilya Brizgalov for
by the
decades.
By the way, well, since we to get back to one of the topics we were talking about at the very beginning of this with Claude Giroux, by the way, you said what if Montreal, right?
Yeah.
Do you know a team that I could see actually finding a way to entice him? And there's a key factor that depends on this. But
is it Ottawa?
No, because the whole purpose of this conversation, Ottawa's the hometown team. That's why you said that.
If Matt Murray bounces back, Ottawa's dangerous. Don't overlook it.
They're still not where, but I don't think they're where they need to be though for him to feel like it's a contender.
You're right.
He's going to get.
Also talking about another year from now.
So do you know who I think it is?
Is it Toronto?
Yep. Because I'm sorry.
Do you think do you think he signs the Joe Thornton contract?
I wouldn't. I don't know about that, but here's what I mean when I say that, or when I get into that. I'm sorry. If Wayne Simmons stays there, That's the guy I see getting in Claude Giroux's ear going, you know what?
Hey, come win here.
Like to an extent, this is a fun, like that at the very least, that makes him think. Because do you want to know what? At the end of the day, Claude Giroux has a family. He's going to have 2 kids. His wife is living here right now. But do you know where they live in the offseason? They go right back to Ottawa.
Yep. Well, I think if something like that's going to happen, I think that's more likely to happen after the 3-year Sean Couturier bridge deal type thing you were talking about. At 37, he just
my question to that though, and this is why I said it like that, is because Wayne Simmons might not have that much time.
That's fair.
Even though he's younger, it's the injuries though. Claude Giroux has been relatively, but Claude Giroux has played consecutive games for a long time. His streak broke up because he had COVID.
Right.
Like the guy never, like I don't say the guy never gets hurt, but he never gets hurt to the extent of I need to take a break. The last time he got hurt to the extent of I need to take time off was the one time he had that concussion.
To be fair, Wayne Simmons didn't ever choose to take time off. He was surgically forced to take time off a couple of times.
Fair,
but he was also one of those play through everything type players.
But here's the problem.
Which is part of the reason he's so beat up today.
That's part of the reason he's so beat up today, but it's also like those injuries forcing him to take the time off are why he doesn't make it, or why he is like going to have his career cut short by like 4 years.
Right. Well, we don't know Claude Giroux's future, but you mentioned Toronto, and it's a good little transition. Before I transition to Toronto and the playoffs and kind of where we're going here, while we're touching on milestones, we still had the Giroux graphic up there. I did also want to mention Jake Voracek, 600 points to Flyer. Congratulations.
I'll go back to the Giroux graphic really quick. Yes, yeah. Jake Voracek got 600 points as a Flyer.
All right, moving on. Toronto. So the playoffs. Listen,
you also mentioned before we started recording, and I know we're over the hour mark now, which we didn't think we were going to get to, but that's okay. We're good. Now we're finishing off with the fun stuff, so even when we go a little bit, it's okay.
Absolutely. So the playoffs.
You mentioned 2 players you wanted to talk about.
I did. Let's just touch on them right off the top. So we're talking about Toronto.
Are they both officially in the playoffs now? I think they are.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. Oh, no, Edmonton hasn't technically clinched yet. Not
Ottawa?
technically. No.
Or I'm sorry, not Ottawa. Auston Matthews is going to score 40 goals in a 56-game season. He might score 44 goals if he goes nuts.
Do you know why Edmonton hasn't clinched a playoff spot yet?
Because they're like 6 games down, aren't they? Because they're missing a couple of games against Vancouver, aren't they?
It's because Vancouver has only played 45 games, which means they have which means they have 11 to go, and they are 21 points back with 11 games to play, which means that mathematically they're still alive.
All right, they're gonna if they lose literally 2 points in the next.
That literally, if Edmonton lost, well, and like, because by that logically, I'm trying to think. Edmonton's up by 15 on Calgary with too many games to go, so they've clinched on everybody else except for Vancouver. Right. They win a game, they're in. They're in.
Vancouver's not winning out.
And I wasn't trying to say that. I just thought that mathematically by now they've clinched. They still have not.
But either way, Auston Matthews is going to score 40 goals. He might score 42, 43, 44. He might push for 45 if he really goes ham in the next couple of games here. And there's a really solid chance that Connor McDavid has 100 points.
Toronto. All right, let's start with Auston Matthews for a minute. Toronto has 5 games remaining. If assuming Auston Matthews plays in all 5, he'll finish the year with 52 games played.
And could very easily
have
44 goals.
Now hold on. I want to go back to, but here's the thing I wanted to get to. I want to go back to a stretch, and I believe it was around, I'm trying to figure out when he missed time. So I think he missed the end of February into March, because there was a gap from February 24th to March 3rd. Okay? When he came back, the first 3 games he played back, he did not score a goal. He had 2 against Winnipeg on the 9th, 1 against Winnipeg on March 11th, then another 5 games without a goal, and since then, the most games he's gone without a goal in a row is 1.
That's absurd. That is absurd.
So my argument is, if he does, he's going to finish with 52 out of 56 games played, and he had a 3-game goalless drought and a 5-game goalless drought not long after the injury, which, by the way, was to the wrists.
Yep.
Which means if he does not miss the time, if he gets those 4 games back, stays healthy the whole year, and gets those 8 games back
without injury never exists.
So if he gets 12 games back, the 4 he missed plus the 8 that he didn't score goals in near the injury, does he hit 50?
Yeah.
Yep. 50 and 56. He had a shot.
So 40 goals in a 56-game season or 100 points in a 56-game season. I think Connor McDavid's going to win the Hart Trophy, But I'm asking.
What was the clue?
Well, sure. But between those two feats, what do you think is more impressive?
I don't even know. Wow. I mean, like, can I just take the easy way out and say they're equally as impressive?
No, because I asked which do you think is more impressive. Absolutely not.
Do you want to know what? Okay. Do you want to know what I think is more? Honestly, do you want to know what I think is more impressive?
Yeah.
I mean, I think McDavid's this year is more impressive because of the 56 games. Like to play 56 games and get to 100 points is absurd.
Insane.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, what is that average? Just I want to.
I think it's the same pace he had in his Hart Trophy season a couple of years.
It's 1.78, almost 1.79. Okay, if I take that number and multiply it over 82 games, he comes away with 146 points.
That's insane.
Okay,
when's the last player not named Mario to do that? Like, what did Kucherov have last year? Like, 2 years ago.
I had a funny. By the way, I had a funny thought. Okay. Because, and I'll tell you why I had a funny thought. Because I actually was watching that game last night. It was on NHL Network at the end of the night. So, let's put it this way. Not that Calgary's going to the playoffs, but after I watched the Flyers and Devils play for 2.5 hours, I kind of needed something better.
You need good hockey to watch.
And I think I did. You know why? Because in addition to that game, I streamed parts of Vegas, Arizona for a little bit. And Vegas is a very good team. Love watching them play. They're good, obviously.
If any of our followers are MMA fans, I watched Dominic Reyes get knocked out by Yuri Prohaska. That's how I spent my night. Spinning back elbow, Dom went face first. It was ugly.
All right, do you want some perspective from what was the number I said? 146?
146. Who was the last player to hit 146 at all?
That's not okay. I wasn't trying to do that, but
okay.
just for context, Wayne Gretzky broke that mark 10 times in his career.
Insane.
No, but I did have this thought. Okay, so what and I'll go back. Oh, so my thought from watching yesterday's game was Jesse Puljujarvi, who plays for Edmonton still, changed his number. He's now 13. He's not 98 like he used to be.
Okay.
And I almost wondered. I'm like, can anybody else in Edmonton Oiler history wear a number that comes close to 99 that isn't quite like that is like without having this talent level that Connor McDavid has?
No.
Because let's play a game for a minute, okay?
Well, wait. I'm still waiting for an answer to my question. 40 goals or 100 points.
I gave you an answer. I said I said I'll take McDavid because it's a 56 game season.
See,
like
if it was the other way around.
What's impressive for me about Matthews is more. It's not the number of goals in the season as it is the I think yesterday I saw the 82 game pace. The 82 game pace is like 62 or 65 or something ridiculous like that even. And that's why I sit there and I say I wish Matthews didn't miss time because if he didn't miss time and he challenges 50 and 56, I mean we haven't even seen
conversation.
We haven't seen anybody come close to 50 and 50 in how many years? Like what? It's happened like
time.
Like I'm kind of overusing the Google.
It's okay.
My phone, right? Because I got to go back and pull up what I was getting up earlier because I had this thought.
Okay.
So by the way, official 50 and 50 goal scorers in history.
Okay.
Maurice Richard in 44-45, which kind of is, I guess that's how you get your name on a trophy, right?
That's how you get a trophy named after you, especially the one for scoring the most goals in a season.
Mike Bossy did it in 80-81. Gretzky did it 3 times, starting in 81-82, but did it 3 times. Mario Lemieux did it in 88-89. Brett Hull did it twice, and that's it.
And by the way, Auston Matthews is like 23 and might actually still just be getting better.
But just for point of reference, that was 5 people, right? Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Maurice Richard, Mike Bossy, Brett Hull.
We're Hall of Famers, 5 for 5.
They're pretty Hall of Famers. They might as well be on they're on the banners outside of the Hockey Hall of Fame. They're not even Hall of Famers.
That's basically the Mount Rushmore of goal scorers.
There you go. There we go. Okay. Oh, by the way, that's 50. Okay, so this is a good context point too, because that's 50 and 50. Like your team's 50.
Right.
There are also a few names on there
who did it in 50 games played.
who did 50 game play, but their team had played more.
They missed him in
So,
time,
for example,
I think Bossy did it at least one more time, didn't he?
No, Bossy only did it once.
Oh, okay.
Lemieux did it twice. Like Lemieux did it once officially, once unofficially. His 50 and 50 was in his 48th, but the team's 72nd.
Okay.
And Lemieux did. Hold on, Lemieux did it. Wait a minute.
Was that the year
Lemieux
he
did
missed
it
all that time?
Hold on. Lemieux did it twice like that. So in 92-93, he had 50 and 48. It was the team's 72nd. And in 95-96, he scored his 50th in his 50th, which was the team's 59th.
Oh, okay.
Now, the other three players, by the way, and again, okay, I'm sorry, not quite all Hall of Famers, but should be. Yari Curry, who is a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Cam Neely, who is a Hall of Famer. And Alex McGillney, who should be a Hall of Famer.
Who should be a Hall of Famer. So if it was 50, would you take Matthews over McDavid?
Hang on a minute. You know what I really want to do for a second? Because I have to assume at this point, based on the rate he's scoring at, it would be 50, probably in the team's 50, because it would cut it really close, right? I mean,
right.
It's a 56-game season. He'd either have to get it in the last 2 games of the season, which still would be ridiculously impressive, or it would have happened in the 50 exactly, right?
Right.
So I sit there and I go, again, looking at the list of players who actually did that, Gretzky was the last to, or I'm sorry, Lemieux was actually the last to really do it in the first, 50 and 46 in 89. 1989. So
wow.
It's something that hasn't happened for 30 years.
Didn't Gretzky do it in 37 one year?
Gretzky didn't. It was his 36th game.
It's
or 39th. I'm sorry, 39th.
39th, okay.
Yeah, take a while. Guess who it was against.
Was it against the Flyers? It
yeah,
was against the Flyers, wasn't it?
Yeah, because okay, hang on a minute. This is how ridiculous this was, okay? He ended up with, in 50 games, he ended up with 61 goals. He had 50 in 39, and it was the 1981-1982 season, and that game... right, okay, here you go, ready? So, he played his 38th game. It doesn't even say who it was against, but he played his 38th game of the 1981-82 season and scored 4 goals to get to 45. He was at 41 in 37.
And just decided he
then
wanted
scored
to
4, got to 45, and the next game against the Flyers, he scored 5 goals. The last one was an empty netter with 3 seconds left. And to get to 50. Do you know what the date was?
What was it?
December 30th. The calendar year hadn't even turned over yet, and he already had 50.
It's insane.
Anyway.
Absolutely insane.
But anyway... Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I skipped. I'm sorry. Mario Lemieux was 89. I forgot the Brett Hull years, too. Brett Hull was 92. So, again, same thing. Still 30 years, almost exactly.
He ended up scoring 65 or whatever it was, right?
I
think he ended up scoring 60 that year.
Brett Hull scored... What you're talking about Brett Hull, right?
Yeah.
Brett Hull scored 50 goals in 50 games or fewer twice. His first was 90-91. He scored his 50th and second goal of a game in their 49th game, and he finished that year with 86. The second
86 goals?
Yes.
Holy,
the second
that's
time...
the one I'm thinking of, okay.
The second time was 91-92, so he did it the very next year, 50 in exactly 50, and he ended that season with 70.
Yeah, a player's never going to score 86 goals in a season again, are they?
Probably not.
We might see it. We might see a world where somebody scores 70.
I think you have to ask it as high as it goes. And again, I talked about this. I believe I talked about this with Broads on Open Ice Hits, which was that McDavid with 100 points in whatever got the stamp of the Gretzky stamp of approval of if anyone can do it, it's him, right? As if to which kind of almost begs the question. If you put Gretzky into today's game, is consistently scoring something along the lines of 60 his 92? You know what I mean? He was scoring 92 goals in a season, but if he put up consistently 60, is he doing something that's ridiculous? The fact that we can even talk about a player in this current era who could challenge his overall goals record for a career,
Which is so
tells you
insane.
all you need to know about Alex Ovechkin as a goal scorer. What like do the role reversal. What would Gretzky have in this era, but what would Ovechkin have in that era?
Oh man, before goalies knew how to play the butterfly, he would have torn it up.
1,000?
Right. And then we're talking about, two different eras, obviously, and we're kind of comparing apples and oranges. That's a little bit of a summer topic. We're getting close to the summer, right? We just got to hold out a little bit more before we can have these insane conversations.
But for sake of argument, the last guy who even got 50 in his first 50 was Mario Lemieux in 95-96.
So it's been
it has been at least
years.
25 years since anybody has done something like that. Now I'm going to go through
and Auston Matthews. The expectations have to be that Auston Matthews is going to challenge that next season, just based on what he's done.
So I'm just checking because, by the way, there's a little section on this that says near misses. There's not a single one on here, by the way, that even comes close to this era.
Okay.
So nobody in this era has even approached the thought of 50 and 50.
Right. Well, we do have a graphic promising that we're going to update the playoff races, so we should probably do that real quick.
I do want to go back to McDavid really quick though, too, because we're talking about those two. Okay. So I went ahead and I went two things really quick. Okay, Auston Matthews. Well, since we're on his subject, we're on goal totals for a minute. What I did instead of worrying about Auston Matthews just this year, and this year is not complete yet, by the way. So, all right, let's play an assumption game then. Let's say he gets at least 4 more. He finishes with 42. In the final 5 games. That gets him to 200 even.
Okay.
In 5 seasons. That's 40. He's 23 years old right now.
Right.
So he's at 200. How many more years? So let's give him until 40.
Yeah.
Right? That means he's got 17 more years to go. If he averages 40.
Okay.
And adds on to what he already has. If he averages 40. Which is
tough to assume he's going to score 40 when he's 35, 36. But I get it.
Well, no, see, but that's why I said if he averages. That means if he has 61 year and comes back with
average, right?
Right. So if he averages 40 for the rest of his career, do you know what he finishes with if he plays 17 more years and ends this year at 200?
That's over 1,000, isn't it?
No, it's not quite.
I'm sorry, my quick math is off. Go ahead.
It's not better than Gretzky.
Okay.
But he's at 880.
Wow.
Which is quite possibly going to be the 3rd best goal scorer of all time.
Yeah. Well, and at a certain point, we've talked about Auston Matthews.
Okay.
At a certain point, if you're doing career projections, right, in terms of pure goal scoring, Auston Matthews is probably on a better pace, if I had to guess.
Okay, so let's play another game.
Yeah.
Let's do Connor McDavid now.
Okay.
Connor McDavid has 6 years in the league, so he's going to have a little bit less time to project. But Connor McDavid is currently at 556 points.
Wow.
In his career. He has 7 games left this year.
Okay.
I don't want to assume he's going to get to 100 this year.
Okay.
So let's just
give him 95.
No, so let's just do this. Let's just stop now. Let's not even factor in the final 7. Let's just stop now and say 556 in 6 seasons. That is an average of, I'll even round down, not round up. Right. It's an average of 92 a year.
And that includes a season where he missed half the year because of his collarbone and a 56-game season.
All right, but anyway.
And so last year, which got cut short, too.
Sure. So let's say it's an average of 92.
Yeah.
He's 24. Let's give him 16 years to get to 40. Okay, and now add on what I just did at his average of 92. That's not saying he won't have 110.
He's going to surpass it a lot, right?
Right. So I add his 556 to what I averaged out over the next 16 years. Do you want to know what the total is?
Hit me.
2,028. That would make him the 2nd player all time to hit 2,000 points in a career. Wow. Which by the way, it comes nowhere near Gretzky.
No.
But
it doesn't touch him.
But to be the only other player with 2,000, and by the way, and it's a big if, obviously, because overall team success does come into play.
Sure.
Could you imagine if he does the majority of it with the Oilers? And it's the same story.
Oh, my God.
Which is why I said, Jesse Puljujarvi wearing 98, get out of there with that. McDavid wears 97, Gretzky wore 99. These could be the 2 greatest players point-wise that we've ever seen.
That's funny.
So back to the playoff races now.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Let's touch on these real quick, and we will talk about these next week. So our schedule for next week, by the way, just while we're here.
Yes.
We are
not doing a show on Sunday.
Not doing a show next Sunday, because after next Sunday there is one game remaining. And we really desperately want to go to our every other week schedule because this team is awful.
Actually, not only that, but actually, like, I think the other part of it is that there's also no sense in trying to come on here on Sunday, do a show, and talk about like the team with one game remaining when we could just wait until end. Well, no, but not only that, when we could just wait for what really is the talking point at this point, which is not, hey, there's one more game left, what went wrong?
Right.
It's the season's over, what went wrong, and let's maybe see what the cryptic message that AV is hiding from us right now because the season's not over yet is. Let's get through these exit interviews. Let's actually see if there's, here's the other thing too.
Well, and that's what we're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do next week.
Oh, I gotta throw this in there really quick. I'm sorry, okay. I don't want to try to take us away from the playoff stuff in the schedule. Apparently, Ray Didinger is on with because Glenn Mack now does a Sunday show on WIP on the weekends.
Okay.
So Ray Didinger's on. Everybody who knows Ray Didinger in this city knows he's the football guy, right? Football Hall of Fame writer, right? But Glenn Mack now just tweeted, great line by Ray Didinger on the Flyers. They're playing dump and chase, but there's no chase. It's just dump.
Listen, that's about right.
That's brilliant. Actually, I'm retweeting that right now because that's brilliant.
Well, I'll make sure to go retweet it from the podcast account at YWT Podcast. But you can also see it retweeted at Kevin's Twitter account at Kevin_Durso, by the way. So what we're doing next week is we currently have it penciled in for Wednesday evening. We will be doing a live show, and you can follow our Twitter for more information. Again, I just threw it out there at YWT Podcast. But next Wednesday or Thursday, whenever the media availabilities happen, basically that night or the next night, whenever our schedules allow.
Right. Basically,
we're trying to do a live show.
What we're trying to figure out at this point is that the last game is Monday. Knowing where they stand, I would say, expect the players to talk Tuesday, and Wednesday to be the coach and GM, and that'll be the end of it. Maybe we'll get here's the problem too. They can make this as extensive or not extensive as they want to make it. Most of the practice days in the games anymore, I'm not kidding you. You know this from when you experienced one game with me in the press box, but you also have seen how I have to operate when I go downstairs and do locker room and all that stuff.
Right.
It's multiple players. It's a good amount of players, honestly. We're talking about 5, right? On a typical day. Right now we're getting 2 on Zoom. Because they're just and literally last night, what's the best that they can do at this stage of the season? Truthfully, Claude Giroux and Brian Elliott sat in front of us because, and I didn't even hop on the media call. Probably because they couldn't
convince anybody else to do it,
or because of the fact that at the end of the day, that's the guys who are the easiest ones to not get answers from, but the easiest ones to go to. It's here's the captain of the team after another loss. Here's the goalie who was in net. Tell us what happened. That's about it. And the coach talks. That's about it. So when
either
it
way,
really
once all that kind of season-ending availability is out,
I don't think it's going to take. I don't think it's going to take long. I think Wednesday night is realistic.
Yeah, because make sure to subscribe over on our YouTube channel
because they'll do it early. They'll do this. They'll do this stuff at 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that, and it'll be when Chuck Fletcher speaks. It'll be extensive because he'll have the most questions. It'll probably be close to a half hour.
I hope he talks for 4 hours and tells us what's wrong.
Well, he won't tell.
It's not going to happen, but
I mean, I'd like for Alain Vigneault to have probably about 20 minutes worth as well instead of 10, or 5.
And you know what? I think he might.
I sure hope so. I mean, honest to goodness, there's not much I can hear from the players at this point that really is earth-shattering.
Right.
You want the coach who kind of already left it as I have a theory on on all the things that went wrong or some of the things that went wrong this year, and I don't want to share it while we're playing games. So now we're waiting for that. We're going to probably that's going to be the leadoff question to Alain Vigneault is, so you said a couple weeks ago that you kind of had an idea of what went wrong. Can you kind of dive into what you think went wrong now that the season's over?
Right.
And that's fair. And then obviously Chuck Fletcher is gonna, now that his real work begins, and it's a massive. I mean, it is a colossal sized, off season for him. But
yeah.
But as for the rest of us, and me included, by the way, because on Open Ice Hits Broads and I are gonna have an absolute ball coming on probably twice a week again to talk playoff hockey, because when the playoffs roll around, there's going to be too much going on for us to not have shows regularly.
Yeah, I can't wait for our next show because we get to close the chapter on this team. And
then every show from then is literally if anything happened with the Flyers and playoffs, and most of the time it won't be much more than playoffs. At least while the playoffs are going on.
I'm very excited to close the chapter on this very disappointing season and start talking about playoffs? Because playoffs are fun.
I mean, I had this. I had this thought the other day too. By the way, because we're already we've been kind of back and forth in what the potential schedule down the road will be.
Yeah.
For the show and things like that, because we want to go to every other week, but there's also something coming in. But there's going to be things that kind of get thrown into the mix that throw our schedule off a little bit and things like that. Yeah. I had this thought the other day because I went, my wife and I are actually taking a vacation for the first time in well over a year because that wasn't the shore, because for the first time and it's because we actually feel like we can go somewhere for real because we've been vaccinated and by the time we'll go we'll have been vaccinated for over 3 months.
Right.
So it's a big deal, and all that stuff. And
congratulations.
But I had the thought, and I'm like, I don't know if I would agree to a vacation in mid to late June if there was even a
Flyers
thought.
Were good.
Right. If there was even a thought that I'm like, there's going to be playoff games maybe.
Right. I can't miss coverage of Eastern Conference Final games theoretically.
Well,
right.
And I say that not to the sense of I'm sure that we could have tried to plan something somewhat last minute. But the type of trip, because we're lumping into a trip with my family and things like that,
listen, it's a big trip for you guys.
But the question was presented to us about possibly doing that in early March, and
when they were still okay.
No, by this point they were already starting or maybe it wasn't. I'm trying to remember what was.
They started sliding.
No. I'm sorry.
No,
it was
sliding immediately in
no,
early
never mind.
March.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. It was early April. My bad. It was early April. It was it was literally a week after the Buffalo game.
Okay.
That they lost. The first Buffalo game they lost.
Oh, you said, yeah, absolutely. We're good.
And we didn't say yes to it, but we said, you know what? We'll talk about it and we'll think about it because it was legitimately worth thinking about. It was at that point, it was legitimately, let's think about this because
we could already see the playoffs slipping away.
For me, they were already over. For me, it was
sure.
already over from the Buffalo loss. So I'm sitting here going, it's not a hockey thing that's keeping me from saying yes. It's just is that what we really want to do? And then we within 24 hours we'd already started talking about it, and we're I think we've talked ourselves into this. Let's just do it.
Okay.
But that I would never, if they had actually had a legit shot at the playoffs, I would have never thought about, because at the end of the day, I'm not even missing more than even for me and Broads, it's gonna take us off for one episode, if that. And it's we don't need to have an episode at that point. We won't worry about it,
Right, and you and I have talked, and I think we have a show scheduled that day. I'll get a co-host, or we'll readjust it.
No, I think actually, no, you pulled, the way we rearranged the schedule, we don't have a show now.
We skipped that week. Okay.
Yeah, we do skip that week. The following week is my wife and I's first anniversary, and we're actually, and again, same thing, along the same vein of taking the first vacation in well over a year, we're going to actually finally have the party we intended to have when the wedding actually happened, because of the fact that we've kind of there's pretty much not a day, you included with this, since you just told me this at the beginning of the show too, or right around the time we started. You included. There's pretty much not a day I don't go on social media anymore and find somebody who I know who has gotten vaccinated. I
got my first shot of Pfizer yesterday.
To kind of create that scenario. So family-wise, which is the majority of it, by the way, family-wise, they're even talking about a July picnic thing, which I don't know if I'm going to, but they're talking about the traditional picnic we have that's at one of my cousin's houses that has a pool.
Things are starting to come back.
But we're as a family, we're sitting here going, that's a primarily outdoor gathering anyway, and we're all going to be vaccinated.
Yep.
And we're family.
Absolutely.
What's the reason to not have this thing? Truthfully.
Yeah.
Mostly.
There have been CDC guidance updates that reflect that, and things are.
It continues to get better. It really does continue to get better. Yeah,
things are getting better, and
I can't speak for you because you're not, you just said at the top, in the middle of the show, you're not as local anymore. You moved out, so locally things continue to get better and go in the right direction. Well, in terms of what? Well,
no here.
Well, in terms of I'm saying for us though, since you were right outside of the city too, I am, the in-city stuff is taking a step in the right direction. Apparently, I just saw something on the news, and I'm not watching the news regularly because that's too depressing most of the time. But the story is supposedly is that in the area, case numbers are dropping again. We're hitting that summer point where it's things are in a really good spot right now, and we're all getting a lot of people are getting vaccinated. So it's
getting my first shot yesterday really felt like the first light at the end of the tunnel.
It should be a huge relief. Honestly, there's like this sense of, and don't get me wrong, like wait until you get the second one, because when you get the second one,
my second dose is in 3 weeks. I know it's gonna. I know.
Yeah.
But
we didn't have a show 1 week because it kicked my ass.
The only thing that I have on my calendar that I'm excited for, that I'm desperately looking to go to, is I'm actually coming home for a weekend in August for Hella Mega Tour.
Oh, you're going to that?
Oh, yeah. And we've had tickets for like 2 years, and COVID shut it down once. And like, I'm coming back and I'm going. And that's at least half the reason I'm getting vaccinated right now. You're gonna get vaccinated whenever, but I'm unemployed.
You're gonna have to text me then, because if it goes off, I'm there too.
Oh, I got some family going. We're gonna party.
So yeah, my wife and I and my sister and her boyfriend are all going. And and here's the funny part, and I don't know how it's going to work completely yet, but we have decent seats and everything. Like, we're in one of the seatings. We're not on the field, but we're in one of the seating sections that's lower level, so we're going to have a good seat.
We're like first or second row of the 300s.
Oh, okay.
So we're in goods.
But you got
fine with those seats.
But you got to start in the bottom, so it won't be hard for you to. It won't be hard to link up.
No, absolutely not. I'm sure we will meet up if assuming this concert goes as expected.
So here's the funny part, and I'm not trying to make this like we were talking playoffs and stuff, but I'm not trying to make this whole thing. But in between,
we're wrapping up. At this point, we're going to talk playoffs on next week's show.
That's fine. No, so I bought
Make sure you tune in.
I shouldn't say bought, but so after the weekend of I don't remember who they played in the first one. Maybe it was the weekend right around when Carter Hart got shut down, or technically it had been shut down because.
Right.
Alex Lyon played the Saturday game, and then they played the Islanders on Sunday, which was the Hockey Fights Cancer night. So the next day was a complete off day. The team was off for 3 days in a row for the first time all year. And I had a buddy who had texted me the week prior and goes, "Hey, by the way, like I have Phillies tickets for that." And the game ended up being like awful. They lost 2-0, but it was.
I remember you went to this game,
but it was the first time I had actually been to a sporting event with a ticket,
right,
in well over a year. You know, the only thing I like, because, you know, I don't have to buy hockey tickets anymore.
Oh, man,
what
a shame. Poor me.
I mean, not that a lot of people out there seem to be, apparently, but whatever.
I was going to say, tickets are probably pretty close to free on StubHub anyway.
But it was unique to sit in a seat and watch a game and be like, okay, I'm here in attendance. This is kind of like...
You don't have to worry about an article you're writing or...
No, well, it wasn't even just that. Like, to do it in that time and be like, you know what? For anybody who's gone to a Flyers game in the last 2 months, or a month and a half, I get it. Like, this feels totally normal to an extent. Even though it's not completely normal, it's like,
sure,
this feels good. It feels safe. It feels done right. And and I kind of like taking what we just talked about. Like, I'm really kind of amped up to see like another 2 months from now, almost 2 to 3 months. Actually, it'll be like we still got to go through all of June, all of July, almost all of August, to actually sit there and say, you know what? First concert in a long time.
Yeah, I hope we're at a place where that is
Have you seen anybody on that bill before?
I have not. And,
you're in for a treat then, because see, my sister and I
don't particularly care about Weezer.
Okay.
I like them, they're fine. But Fall Out Boy and Green Day are bucket list bands for me. This is a huge show in my life.
And all right, then so as somebody who is like, I'm not saying I'm the same way. Here's where I'm at. Weezer and Fall Out Boy, I've heard all my life because they were like, they hit their peak when I was finishing up.
Right.
Well, so are you.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I love them. They were like you're like fine.
They were all on they were on the radio constantly,
right,
throughout those years. This, by the way, I know we're wrapping it up soon. I'm laughing. No, I'm laughing because of the fact that this sounds like our first show after COVID started.
It sure does.
We talked about music half the time on that thing.
Wait until like
the off season.
The off season, man. We're gonna learn a lot about each other.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, what I was trying to get at is that I've never seen them either. I've heard good things. I actually got it. Like, I probably know more Weezer songs than I know Fall Out Boy songs. Of course I know Fall Out Boy songs. I'm not saying I don't. I probably to be honest.
I'm a Fall Out Boy fan.
So here's the thing: Weezer probably hasn't put out as much music in the last 10 years as Fall Out Boy has. So I don't know as many of the, like, when Fall Out Boy goes into a classic that was out when I was in 8th grade, like, I'm there for it.
You're gonna know Sugar We're Going Down is what
Bingo.
you're telling me.
Like that's
Okay.
it. Like that comes on and I'm sitting there going like the way that we all reacted when we were at the 8th grade dances, right?
Man, I really hope that these bands do the right thing and play the classics, and they don't do that thing where like they play 6 songs off their new album because it's their new album and they have to. I'm really hoping we see 2 hours of nonstop hits from each band.
Okay, now let me tell you something about Green Day then, because Green Day is not a bucket list item for me anymore because I already saw them once. My sister and I went to go see them 3 years ago, or 4 years ago by this point. It was 2017. And I'm not kidding you. They had an opener, by the way. I don't remember much about it because no, because the opener played maybe for 45 minutes, and I kid you not about this. I go to a decent number of shows when I have the time.
Okay.
Might have been the fastest transition from one band to the next I've ever seen.
I believe that.
Like in terms of breakdown, set the stage right for the next, like for the headliner, let's go. They were on in maybe 15 minutes after the opener was on.
Nice.
And they then played. Because consider that the opener probably went on at 7 o'clock, maybe 7:30. They were on by 8:30.
Wow.
And then played for the next 3 hours.
I hope. I want
don't
Hell and Omega
know.
to be 8 hours long.
It's supposed
not gonna be?
It's supposed to start at 5:30 though, so
Isn't
it's a 6-hour show.
I think I heard each act is getting 2 hours.
And there is supposed to be
basically just playing
there
a
is
full
supposed to
set.
be an opener, if you will.
Great.
I'm not gonna. I am not gonna lie though. I do go to these shows and get intrigued to see if like something stands out. Like actually, believe it or not,
sure.
several years ago, and I did not know this at the time. I had no clue who these guys were because I don't. It's not what I listen to on the radio all the time. I had a buddy who, on a whim, literally, it was the weekend of my birthday. We were having a dinner. I was not long out of high school, I was not long out of college, so I didn't have like much work requirements. So a Sunday night show didn't bother me.
Right.
And he goes, "Want to go see Muse tomorrow night at the Center?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I knew a couple of their songs. I didn't know a ton. I actually listen to a lot of their songs now because of that show. I really like their music. But the opener was X Ambassadors, who do some of the songs that are in like they're
They
in
went
car
on to have
commercials.
they've had some stuff.
Renegade's
since then,
been in a car commercial and
Yeah.
things like that. And I'm like, I had no idea it was them. I hear the song, I'm like, oh wait,
that
I
band?
know this song.
Oh, I know this song. Okay.
I didn't know this was them. Like, okay, that's cool. And like, I'm like, so like, I get something out of that. Like, there's several times you hear a song and you go, wait, I know that. I didn't know who it was. That's really cool. I just saw that live. Okay, that's cool. You know.
Yeah.
So like, that's why I get a little interested in openers. But trust me, even if it's 2 hours for Green Day,
I know.
they will hit you with new stuff, but they don't go over the top with it.
See, and they also haven't put out an album in a while. I think when this tour was originally
They did a
put
year
together,
ago, didn't they? Didn't they
when
do a
this
COVID
tour-
era?
When this tour was originally put together, their scheduled album came out.
Has that been out? Has that been out that long?
I think so. But
They
now,
did. They did have a new single out like a month and a half ago.
right.
Which
Well,
actually, believe it or not, I like what I always do. This is my sister and I don't listen to a lot of the same music.
Okay.
So this is one of the few bands that we have that we're like, we like this band. We'll go see this band. You know, all that stuff. So when they put out a new song, I usually I always sit there and go like, especially if I haven't listened to it yet. I might have, but like,
has NBC
but I sit there
bought
and we
the rights
both
to play it 4 million times on the broadcast, or
actually I think they have.
Fire Ready Aim or whatever it's called? It's oof.
I say I have a buddy who did not like that album at all.
No.
I pulled my sister and I both listened to it and both pulled like 3 songs that were like, that one's good, but it's never going to see the light of day. But we're like, that one's pretty good. Like that one sounds like we do that a lot too. By the way, with Green Day, we go that one sounds like, and then pick an older one. Like we sit there and do that all the time. So when they had a new single out, we both like listened to like 20 seconds of it. And she's got her head going a little bit, and I'm like, "Yeah, you like this? This sounds like an older thing. This sounds good. This is good."
Yeah, Green Day is one of those bands. They're a little hit or miss for me.
My sister and I also way back when my sister and I also went and saw when they had they turned American Idiot into a musical.
Yep,
We went and saw that too. That was fun.
Extremely jealous.
Were
you there when he was there? Or
No.
just the
We didn't go
musical?
to we didn't go on Broadway. We went when it was in Philly on like the touring cast. But I do remember coming away from that show going like, that's a really fun way to create a story. Like, I already knew the album kind of told a story, but they not only used American Idiot songs, they injected 21st Century Breakdown songs into the storyline of this musical, and I'm like, this is really sick how they did that.
All I know is that...
And they were involved with it, too.
One of these days, Billy Joel's going to do the same thing. Write a Broadway musical with his music in it.
Really?
Oh, come on. Come on. Think about his catalog and tell me that doesn't tell some stories.
You need a story about, like, The Stranger?
Right. You got The Stranger. You got Scenes from an Italian Restaurant.
Well,
She's Always a Woman. Well,
wait a minute.
There's really good music. She's Always a Woman is a phenomenal, like, musical ballad.
Oh, it is. Well, he writes great ballads anyway. But beyond the point, Scenes from an Italian Restaurant is already a miniature movie. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant was the 9-minute songs on American Idiot before anybody even knew who Green Day was.
You know how the musical starts? Anthony works in a grocery store saving his pennies for someday.
I mean, look, you're speaking my language. This is one
Tell
of my
me I'm wrong.
Like, look, you guys have already pointed out on the show that I listen to
Billy,
country.
Call me.
You guys have already pointed out on the show previously that I'm the country guy. I listen to country music, go to country concerts, all that stuff.
You may or may not own multiple cowboy hats.
Yeah. But beyond the point of that, though, like, you just hit on two of my favorite non-country artists to listen to. Like, right there.
We've been doing this show for like a year together.
Billy Joel, like 2 years ago, I'm so glad, like, for all the years he'd been coming to Philly, it was one of those things where I went, why haven't I done this yet? And I did, and it was the year before COVID. And I'm like, glad I did that. And when COVID is over, I actually, one of the things, because my parents turned around and said they would go to a show like that. And I'm like, you know what? I think you should go see Billy Joel.
I got you one better.
What's that?
2015? I saw him in the Garden.
Yeah.
20 rows from the stage.
Was that when the residency started?
20 rows, 5 months in. 20 rows from the stage on the floor on Billy Joel's birthday.
Oh, no. Does that mean there were guests?
No, not. So he had an opening act, which he doesn't usually have, but it was Gavin DeGraw.
Interesting.
Okay, sure. He played about 6 songs. He played all the Gavin DeGraw songs you know. I'm sure you know more, but all 6
Actually,
Gavin
no,
DeGraw
I
songs,
don't, but if I'm...
Oh, do you not? You would know.
Obviously, I know. Look, obviously I know who he is, and I know, like,
I'm in love with a girl.
I
don't want to be.
That's what it was. I'm like the guitar riff from I Don't Want to Be is playing in my head as I speak, and I can't put a name on it.
Was him?
Yeah, that was him.
Right. See the Gavin DeGraw songs, right? Where you go, oh, like you said with Ex Ambassadors, we're like, oh, I didn't know that was Gavin DeGraw. Oh, sure, okay.
No, the one I knew, it was I Don't Want to Be. I just couldn't think of the.
So Gavin DeGraw did the opener.
Okay.
And then during the intermission, because he took a little bit of an intermission, Jimmy Fallon and Howard Stern came out.
Are you kidding me?
And then they set up a thing, and Jimmy Fallon brought his ragtime group from the show with the color pinstripe suits. Oh yeah. And when Billy Joel came back out, we sang "Happy Birthday" to him.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. But man, okay. We got to wrap this show up because we are going on far too long. You and I can talk music after we wrap this show. But like, one more thing: if you've seen Billy Joel live, you know how special Piano Man is.
There's something spiritual that happens when he starts at that.
All right. Speaking of spiritual, I don't know. It's Sunday. There's a joke here somewhere. Something transition.
Thank you for coming to the Church of YWT. We'll be back next week. It won't be Sunday, though.
If anything, it's the Church of Billy Joe Armstrong. Let's get it right.
All
right. We're going to get out of here. We will be back not next Sunday, mid next week. Follow our Twitter at YWT Podcast for more information about that. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find the show anywhere you can find podcasts, as well as YouTube and Facebook and et cetera, as well as sportstalkphilly.com. Make sure to check it out there too. Until next week, the season's almost over. We're on our way out of here.